My parents ignored me every Christmas until I bought a mansion. They came with a locksmith and fake papers to take it. They didn't know I had filled the dark house with police and reporters waiting for them to break down the door. I sat in the dark and listened to my brother pick my lock. The house was completely black. No tree lights, no porch lamp, not even the clock on the microwave. Just the cold of a December night pressing against the windows and the sound of Travis on the other side of my front door, doing what Travis had always done, taking something that didn't belong to him and telling himself it did. I knew his laugh. I had known it for 38 years. The sound he makes when he thinks he's already won. A short, low sound. More breath than voice. Like the punchline is only for him and the rest of the room is just background. I heard it through the door at 9:04 p.m. on Christmas Eve. I sat in my armchair in my good coat with a folder in my lap and I did not move, because filling the dark with me was not the only thing I had done to prepare for tonight. For 20 years, there was no chair for me at their Christmas table. I want to be precise about that because people hear it as a metaphor and it wasn't. It was a physical chair, an actual absence of seating. Every Christmas, my mother set the table like a catalog spread. Cloth napkins with the embroidered edges, the good plates with the gold rim, pine cones she dusted with fake snow from a can, candles in the brass holders she kept in the sideboard the rest of the year. The table in the dining room of the house on Carrier Street seated 8 with the leaf in. There were, for most of my childhood, 7 people. My parents, my mother's sister Diane and her husband Roy, Travis's best friend Connor, who was there every year because his own family situation was complicated, and me. 7 people, 8 seats. My mother always set 7 places. The first time I remember it, I was 8 years old. I found my place, the one I had always sat in, the chair with the slightly wobbly left rear leg, and it was gone, replaced by the sideboard. My mother came out of the kitchen, saw me standing there, and crouched down to my level in the particular way she did when she was about to explain something I wasn't going to be able to argue with. She smoothed my collar. "We can only set so many places, honey." I ate that Christmas dinner on a stool by the stove. I could hear the conversation from the other room, the specific rise and fall of a table that was full and didn't know something was missing. By the time I was 12, I had stopped expecting the chair. By the time I was 18, I understood that the chair was a statement, not an accident, and that the statement was permanent, and that I had 2 options: absorb it indefinitely or leave. I left with 1 bag, $40, and a promise I made to myself on the bus out of Carrier Street. Someday I would own a place with my name on the door, a place where I decided how many seats there were, a place where nobody could look at the table and find the math came up short by exactly 1. I built it from a yellow bucket. That is not a metaphor. I started a residential cleaning business at 22 with a yellow plastic bucket from the dollar store, a secondhand mop, and a 2003 Honda Civic that I slept in on 11 separate nights over the first 8 months, not consecutively, which I told myself made it better, and which I now recognize was a way of not counting accurately. I had no startup capital. I had no family backstop. I had a willingness to work that I now understand was partly genuine drive and partly the specific energy of a person with something to prove, not to anyone in particular, just to the arithmetic of the stool by the stove. 15 years later, Charlotte's Clean had 4 vans, 11 employees, and service contracts with 37 households in the highest income zip codes in the county. I had learned bookkeeping from a YouTube series in 2013. I had taken a small business management course at the community college in 2015. I had reinvested every dollar I could stand to part with back into the business until the business became the kind of thing that generated more dollars than I could immediately reinvest. And then I started saving. I saved for 3 years. Then I found the house on Aldrich Street, 3 stories, wraparound porch, brick from 1912, a backyard with an oak tree that was older than the house, high ceilings, original molding, a front parlor with east-facing windows that caught the morning light in a way I noticed on my first walkthrough and thought about every day for the 2 weeks it took to close. I paid $487,000, my own money, every dollar documented. When my real estate attorney, Ruth Calloway, 24 years in property law, a woman who had closed more residential transactions in this county than anyone I had spoken to, slid the deed across the table, I read the relevant line 3 times before I signed. Grantee, Charlotte Ann Booth, sole owner. I drove to the house on Aldrich Street alone. I sat on the wraparound porch in the October cold and I looked at the oak tree, and I did not perform anything for anyone because there was no one there. I sat for a long time. It took 3 weeks for the news to travel through channels I hadn't used in years. My mother called on a Tuesday in late October, not a holiday, not a birthday, a Tuesday afternoon, which had not happened in longer than I could precisely recall. Her voice had the warmth she kept for people she needed something from. She said it had been too long and that she would love to come see the new place and that she was so proud. I thanked her and said I'd let her know when I was settled. Travis texted 2 days later. "Congrats on the house. How many bedrooms? What did you pay? Who's it under? Just you?" I read that last question twice. Just you. Not, is Sam splitting it with you, or did you go in with a partner? Those would be the questions of someone asking about ownership because they were happy for me. Just you was the question of a man measuring an asset and trying to understand how many people stood between him and it. Travis was 36 years old and had made a series of financial decisions that I will not detail except to say they had compounded in the way that bad financial decisions compound, and that the number I eventually learned was approximately $90,000 in outstanding obligations across several categories of lender, some of whom were patient and some of whom were not. I did not respond to his text. The next morning, I called Ruth. I told her about the questions, about the timing of my mother's call, about Travis and what I knew of his situation. Ruth was quiet for a moment. "Charlotte," she said, "I want to tell you about something called deed fraud." I spent the following afternoon reading everything Ruth sent me. Deed fraud, also called title fraud or property theft, is exactly what it sounds like and exactly as simple as it sounds, which is the thing that makes it so prevalent. Someone forges your signature on a quitclaim deed. They file it with the county recorder's office. The recorder's office in most counties does not verify signatures. They verify formatting. They check that the document is correctly structured, properly notarized on its face, and accompanied by the appropriate filing fee. They stamp it. Your house now belongs to whoever's name is in the grantee line. You don't find out until you try to refinance or sell, or until someone else tries to take out a mortgage against your property and the title search surfaces the problem. By then, the person who filed the forged deed may have borrowed against the property, sold it, or vanished. 9 times out of 10, Ruth had said, when we see this in a residential context, the perpetrator is a family member, someone who knows the property exists, someone who has enough personal information to construct a convincing document. I enrolled in the county's free property fraud alert service that afternoon. The program monitored the county recorder's database and sent an immediate notification the moment any document was recorded against a property registered to your name. Setup took 12 minutes. I told no one. The alert came on December 3rd at 4:47 p.m. I was at my office on Renner Street reviewing payroll for the week. My phone buzzed on my desk. I looked at the notification, read it once, read it again. A quit claim deed had been recorded against the property at 714 Aldrich Street. Grantor, Charlotte Ann Booth. Grantee, Travis Michael Booth. According to the official records of the county, I had signed my house over to my brother at 2:23 that afternoon. I had been in my office since 8 a.m. with employees present. I had not left for lunch. 3 people could place me in that building at 2:23 p.m. I sat at my desk for approximately 90 seconds. Then I picked up the phone and called Ruth. "It happened," I said. A pause. "When?" "Today. 2:23 this afternoon." Ruth's voice, when she found it, had a quality I had not heard from her in all our professional dealings. Something between fury and satisfaction. The fury was for me. The satisfaction was for what came next. "Come in first thing tomorrow," she said. "Bring everything." The county recorder's office opened at 8 a.m. I was there at 7:48. I requested a certified copy of the recorded deed. I held it in my hands at a standing counter in the lobby of a government building on a Tuesday morning, and I read it carefully. My name in the grantor line, not my signature. My name in my handwriting or a reasonable approximation of it, close enough to have passed the recorder's clerical review, not close enough to survive a forensic comparison. The notary stamp was from a notary public named Gerald Finch. I had never met Gerald Finch. Gerald Finch would later tell police that the woman who appeared before him on December 3rd and identified herself as Charlotte Booth had presented a driver's license and signed the document in his presence. Gerald Finch had done his job as he understood it. He was not charged with anything. He was a victim of the fraud as much as I was. His professional seal used without his knowledge of the deception. I photographed every page of the certified copy, front and back. Then I drove to the police station. Detective Raymond Foster had been with the Property Crimes Division for 16 years. He was the kind of investigator who listened with his whole body, still attentive, with the quality of a person who is building something in their head while you talk and wants to make sure they have every piece before they commit to the structure. I put my folder on his desk. The fraud alert notification, timestamped 4:47 p.m., December 3rd. The certified copy of the forged deed. Screenshotted texts from Travis, just you, dated. Backed up to cloud storage, printed. A voicemail from my mother's number on November 18th that I had not yet mentioned to Ruth, in which my mother's voice and another voice I recognized as Travis's wife Megan could be heard in what sounded like a speakerphone conversation. Megan asking whether the county recorder's office actually checked signatures or just accepted whatever was filed. The voicemail appeared to have been an accidental call, a pocket dial during a conversation not intended for me. I had listened to it twice, saved it in 3 locations, and said nothing to anyone. Foster looked at the folder for a long time. He looked up. "Ma'am, I've been doing this 16 years. I have rarely had a victim walk in this organized. I run a business," I said. "I keep records." He laid out what came next with the directness I had been hoping for. The forged deed was a felony. First-degree forgery, filing a false instrument, fraud. Multiple counts, potentially, depending on what else surfaced. Quick pause. If you want more stories like this in better quality, my Spotify's linked in the description. The problem with deed fraud prosecutions, he explained, was that they were often difficult to complete because the perpetrators realized the fraud had been discovered and stopped before they could be caught in an overt act of possession. To make this case airtight, he said, the most useful thing would be to catch them attempting to exercise rights under the fraudulent deed, entering the property, attempting to take possession. He looked at me. "When do they believe you're away from the house?" I knew the answer before he finished the question. "Christmas Eve," I said. "I haven't spent Christmas in this county in 20 years. They know I'm always gone." Foster looked at me with the expression of a man confirming an architectural decision. "Then that's when they'll come," he said. I called Dana Reese on December 10th. Dana had been a journalist for 11 years, the last 4 covering financial crime and consumer fraud for the regional paper. She had written a series in October on deed fraud that I had found during my initial research, and her byline had appeared on 3 of the 4 most thorough pieces I read. She was 34, methodical, and had the quality of a good investigative reporter. She was interested in the story, not in being the story. I told her what had happened and what was planned. I told her Foster had approved press presence at the anticipated arrest on the condition that she operated within law enforcement parameters for the evening. I told her this was her story if she wanted it. She was quiet for a moment. Why a reporter? She asked. You have the police. You have the documentation. What does press presence add? I thought about my mother's voice on that accidental voicemail. I thought about 20 years of Christmas tables set for 7. I thought about Travis in my front hallway with a forged deed in his hand telling a room he thought was empty that I had never belonged in a place like this. Because I want a record that doesn't depend on what my family says afterward, I said. I want a witness who isn't connected to any of us. I want it written down by someone whose job is to get it right. Dana said, I'll be there. Christmas Eve arrived gray and cold. I had told my mother's voicemail, returned on December 8th with studied casualness, that I was spending Christmas out of town as usual, visiting a friend in Pittsburgh, leaving Christmas Eve morning back after New Year's. My mother had sounded warm. She had said she hoped I'd have a lovely time. She had asked if I might be able to visit in January. I parked 3 streets over on Mercer and walked back to Aldrich in the dark. The house was cold because I had turned the heat down to 48 degrees. Every window was black. The porch light was off. From the street, 714 Aldrich looked exactly like a house whose owner had gone out of town. Detective Foster was already inside with 2 uniformed officers from the district, Officer Carla Vance and Officer Dale Moore. Dana Reese was in the stairwell with a camera and the particular stillness of a person who has waited in worse places for more uncertain outcomes. Foster had positioned himself in the dining room, visible from the hallway, with a clear sightline to the front door. I sat in the armchair in the front parlor. Same folder in my lap that I had brought to Foster's office 3 weeks earlier. Same 2 documents on top. The deed with my name on it. The fraud alert that made sure I'd know first. I turned off my phone screen and I sat in the dark and I waited. I heard the cars at 9:02 p.m. Slow tires on a quiet street. The particular caution of people who are trying not to be heard. 2 doors, then a third, all closing gently in the way people close doors when they have decided the normal volume of things might betray them. Voices, low. Travis first. Told you. Place is dead. She's probably off somewhere feeling sorry for herself. Megan, sharper. Keep it down. Just hurry up. My mother. Are we sure about this? A pause. Travis. Mom, the house is ours now. It's legal. We already filed. We're just coming to take what's ours. I heard the locksmith next. A different sound. The professional quiet of someone who knows what they're doing. Working a pick in my deadbolt with the efficiency of a person being paid for a result, not an experience. 2 minutes, maybe slightly less. The click of the lock. The specific sound of my front door swinging open into the dark. A beat of silence as they stood on the threshold, adjusting to the blackness. Travis walked in first. I could hear him before I could see him in the hallway. His footsteps had the quality of someone entering a space they've already decided belongs to them. Heavier than necessary, occupying the floor with intention. He had the forged deed in his hand. He actually held it up. Would you look at this place? His voice was doing the thing it had always done when he was performing for an audience. Even an audience of 3 people in the dark. All of this for her. And now it's ours. He turned in a slow circle in my front hallway. I could see his outline now, my eyes long adjusted. My mother behind him near the door, coat on, holding her purse with both hands. Megan to his right, already looking toward the kitchen with an assessing expression. Travis's laugh, the one I had known for 38 years. She never belonged in a place like this anyway. She never belonged anywhere. I reached over and turned on the lamp. Light flooded the parlor and spilled into the hallway. The effect was immediate and complete. 3 people in the hallway of my house stood frozen in the sudden brightness, blinking, their faces doing the rapid sequential work of recognition, confusion, recalculation. Detective Foster stepped out of the dining room, badge in hand, held level, not raised dramatically, just present, the specific stance of a man who has been in this moment professionally enough times to have found the efficient version of it. Detective Foster, property crimes. I'm going to need everyone to stay where they are. Officer Vance materialized from the kitchen hallway. Officer Moore from the back of the parlor where he had been standing in a corner I couldn't see from my chair. Dana came down the stairs, camera up, already shooting, the shutter quiet but present. Travis's mouth opened. He looked at Foster. He looked at the officers. He looked at Dana and the camera. He looked at me, standing now, folder in hand, in the parlor doorway. The forged deed was still in his fist. What is this? What did you do? Charlotte, what did you do? His voice had a quality I had never heard in it before. Not anger, though anger was coming. Not calculation, though that was coming too. What was there first was something rawer and more honest. The specific sound of someone who has just understood that they walked into the wrong room and cannot walk back out. I looked at my brother. Merry Christmas, I said. You can put the deed down. The officers would prefer you didn't wave it around. Officer Moore crossed the hallway. Sir, I'm going to need you to set that document on the table. Travis looked at the deed in his hand, looked at Moore, set it on the hall table. My mother had not moved from the doorway. She was still holding her purse with both hands, and her face had done something I was watching carefully. carefully. It had gone through the same sequence Travis's had and arrived at a different destination. Where Travis had landed on something that looked like recalculation, my mother had arrived at something that looked, for the first time in my memory, like genuine comprehension. She looked at the house, the high ceilings, the original molding, Dana's camera, Detective Foster, me. She looked at me for a long moment. "Charlotte," she said, "not a question, not an apology, just my name, the way you say something when you are trying to locate yourself in a version of reality that has just been substantially revised." "Hi, Mom," I said. Travis and Megan were arrested at 9:34 p.m. on Christmas Eve. Charges: first-degree forgery, filing a false instrument with a government agency, criminal fraud, and conspiracy. The locksmith, a man named Perkins who had been hired through a cash transaction and who cooperated immediately and completely upon understanding the nature of the situation, was not charged. He provided a full statement that night. The story Dana Reese filed ran on December 26th with photographs. It was the lead story in the regional section and was picked up by 2 wire services by December 28th. The photographs included the forged deed on my hall table, Detective Foster's badge, my front parlor in the lamplight, looking exactly like what it was, a house that belonged to someone, filled with people who had waited for the truth to arrive. My mother was not arrested. She had not signed the deed, had not filed the deed, had not hired the locksmith, and had not entered the property in a criminal capacity under Foster's assessment. What she had done was present at the scene and aware of the plan, which was a question for the prosecutor's office to evaluate as part of the broader case. I did not participate in that evaluation except to provide my statement, which I gave to Foster on December 26th, and which I gave once, completely, without revision. Ruth Calloway filed a quiet title action on December 27th, a legal proceeding to confirm on the record, permanently and unambiguously, that the fraudulent deed had no legal effect, and that 714 Aldrich Street belonged to me, solely, without cloud or encumbrance. The action was resolved in February. The judge's order was 4 pages. The relevant conclusion, 1 sentence. Title to the property at 714 Aldrich Street, County of Redacted, vests solely and completely in Charlotte Ann Booth. I had it framed. It hangs in the front parlor, next to the east-facing windows that catch the morning light. My mother called in March. I had been thinking about whether I would take that call since January, and I had decided I would take it once and see what it contained and make subsequent decisions from there. That is how I make most decisions, sequentially, based on information as it arrives, without committing to outcomes I can't yet see. She talked for a while before she got to the thing she was trying to get to. She said she hadn't known about the deed until it was already done, which was what I had partly suspected and could not fully verify, and had decided not to make the centerpiece of my assessment of her. Whether she had known the specific mechanism of what Travis was planning was a question with a complicated answer. Whether she had understood, in the general shape of things, that something was being arranged, that was a question with a less complicated answer, and it was the question I was more interested in. She got to the thing eventually. "I should have set a place for you," she said. Just that. Quiet and direct, without the smoothing language she usually applied to things she was acknowledging. "Yes," I said. "You should have." She was quiet. "I don't know what to do with that," she said. "I know," I said. "Neither do I yet. That is where we are. It is not resolution. It is not repair. It is 2 people who share a history and a name and a significant distance between them, trying to find out if there is anything navigable in that distance, or if the distance is simply the accurate shape of things now. I don't know the answer. I know I'm not eating Christmas dinner on a stool by the stove to find out. Last December, I hosted Christmas for the first time. I set the table in the dining room with the east light coming in cold and gray through the windows, the oak tree bare in the backyard, good plates, cloth napkins, candles I had bought myself. 7 people, 3 employees from Charlotte's Clean and their families, Ruth Calloway and her husband Dana Reese, and a neighbor from 2 doors down named Hector, who had shoveled my walk twice without being asked, and who, when I knocked to invite him, had looked surprised in the specific way of someone who does not expect to be included in things. I set 8 places, 8 chairs, 8 settings, 8 napkins folded the way my mother had always folded napkins, not because I was performing anything, but because she had taught me, and the fold was the fold. Every seat was full. Hector brought a pie he had made himself from a recipe he kept in a card box his grandmother had left him. It was the best pie I have ever eaten, and I told him so, and he looked at the table with the expression of a person who has found something they didn't know they were looking for. I know that expression. I recognized it.